we need to talk about isekai anime. If you're unfamiliar with isekai anime, then here's the definition. Isekai in the Japanese language means other world. This is originally a subgenre of fantasy. In this type of anime, the main plot revolves around the protagonist being transported to another world. So now that we know what isekai means, let's talk about this whole phenomenon that started at 2012 with a show called Sword Art Online. The isekai genre suddenly blew up and caused the birth of countless overappreciated shows. But I think that we seriously need to talk about the reasons because it's not nearly as random as it seems. Let's start at the beginning. Isekai is a subgenre of fantasy. But what do we exactly know about fantasy? Well, we know that fantasy is also extremely popular nowadays. Just think about the success of Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. All three of those have something in common. They introduce us to a completely new world, a fantasy world. But let's go even further and ask the question, why do we care about that fantasy world? The answer is actually quite depressing. In today's world, most people hate their own worlds. They can't achieve their goals, they can't enjoy their lives. They struggle and suffocate under an ocean of worries. They feel betrayed, depressed, helpless, worthless. They can't imagine themselves ever finding true purpose in their life. And that is the reason they turn to another world. They essentially abandon the world around them in hope of finding a better one inside these stories. And that is why the genre of fantasy is so popular nowadays. And that is a serious problem. But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that enjoying these shows is bad. I myself have enjoyed many of those shows, and many of them have actually helped me solving my real life problems. What I'm trying to tell you is that there's nothing wrong with getting out of your world and seeing another one, but you have to learn to slowly but surely solve your real life problems, or you'll be forever trapped in those fantasy worlds. And if a show can give you enough willpower to solve a real life problem, then that's truly fantastic. For example, a show called No Game No Life helped me a lot in getting out of my depression. The point is that you should never give up completely on your own world. And now that we know the reason behind the success of fantasy, we can say pretty much the same about isekai anime, just in a much worse way. While fantasy only shows you another world, isekai also encourages you to abandon your own. You see, when you watch a fantasy, you might see a different world, but the characters that appear in this world experience it as their original world. But when we see an isekai anime, then the show starts with the protagonist leaving his original world behind. And seeing him do so encourages the viewers to do the same. But the truth is that while the protagonist might be able to change worlds, you can only pretend. No matter how hard you run from the real world, it will reach you. So do not run from it, but instead prepare for it. Your problems won't solve themselves, but you can solve them. So, now that we know what isekai is, let's talk about the beginning. There were always animes that fell under the genre of isekai, but at the beginning it was just a subgenre. All of these shows had other themes going on aside from being an isekai. They all had something else to offer. And although these shows are predictable and are filled with clichés, you have to consider that they were often the ones to invent those clichés. So at that time they might have been inventive and fresh. So don't judge a show just because it's outdated. But let's get back to the main topic. Before Sword Art Online came out and the whole explosion of the isekai genre started, there were only a few isekais. Maybe one or two per year. The only one that really got popular is probably Zero no Tsukaima. When the first season aired, it was the most popular in its season. But the show's popularity decayed with every season, until its end when it ended with the fourth season, which was only like the fourth or fifth most popular. And just a few months after Zero no Tsukaima ended, SAO came out. So let's talk about SAO. If you are into anime, then you're almost guaranteed to have at least heard of this show. At its time, everyone was talking about SAO. Even to this day, it is one of the most debated anime. And all of this hype is actually understandable. This show is crucial to the anime industry in many ways. First of all, it's extremely popular. But even more importantly, it was popular even outside of the anime community. This show served as a gateway anime for many people, who are now part of the anime community. And this is really important. You see, the first anime that got you into the whole thing that's called anime defines your connection to anime. This is the show that gave you the basic idea of what an anime is supposed to be like. For a long time, this first anime of yours will be the anime. This is the show that you will subconsciously compare with every other show. This is the show that gave you the experiences that you are now trying to find in other animes. And most important of them all, this is what you are familiar with. So, what does this mean from an anime company's point of view? Well, large groups of people who are new to the anime community are hyped about SEO. For a company, these people are easy targets. They suddenly got into anime and are desperately searching for similar shows to watch. Your only job is to mass produce SEO ripoffs. And now we arrive at a point where the anime community splits in half. There are the people who were already into anime long before SEO came out. From this point, let's refer to them as the old anime community. And there are the people who got interested in anime after watching SEO. Let's call them the newcomers. So let's ask the question, what is the difference? Well, the main difference is the knowledge of patterns and tropes. The old anime community is aware of every cheap harem trope and basic data type. They can pretty much predict everything. They are already sick of protagonists that are essentially just there to represent the viewer. They have no personality, they are the same, they are boring. And pretty much every other character is just a basic trope that we have already seen 1,000 times. We've got a typical boring protagonist, we've got a tsundere, a quiet and shy girl, a cute loli, a few support characters, a little sister, etc. And all the major twists are also quite common and predictable. So for the old anime community, SEO is just another harem in a fantasy setting. However, for the newcomers, everything is new and exciting. Every character and twist is a surprise for them. So they experienced SEO as a unique and original concept. For them, this is the first harem anime and the first fantasy anime. And no one has the right to blame them for it. We all have experienced the same, just with different shows. As a personal example, I love Rosario to Empire. It was the first harem anime that I have seen. For me, it was the harem anime. And even to this day, Mizore is my one and only waifu. But I am aware that this show is filled with clichés and I probably wouldn't recommend it for people who have already seen a few harems. If it would have been my 4th or 5th harem anime, then I probably couldn't care less about it. But still, it was my first, so it will always have a special place in my heart. And I'm sure that anyone has at least 1 or 2 shows they love despite knowing that they're not as good as they remember them to be. And for these newcomers, SEO is an important anime that defines their taste. And this already answers why SEO is so debatable. Half the people hate it, half the people love it. And to be honest, SEO's success is mostly thanks to the countless discussions on forums and in YouTube videos. Before these, SEO was just popular. But after all this attention, it became extremely popular. It was a subject that you couldn't really ignore. And so SEO's popularity started growing exponentially. Anime studios had to react to this trend, so they started riding the hype of isekai anime. In 2013, the year after SEO came out, 3 similar isekai has appeared. But these were not complete ripoffs. All of them took a different approach to the concept of another world. The first was Mondaiji Tachiga Isekai Karakuru Soudesuyo. This show threw away the drama and aimed to become a slice-of-life comedy. Hataraku Mao-sama followed its lead, but were more unique and funny. And the third was Log Horizon, which took a more realistic approach and aimed to be a well-written version of SAO with unique characters. In 2014, No Game No Life started airing. This show's plan was to maximize drama, comedy and fantasy, while also swapping physical battles with mental battles. And it did an amazing job. This is the first one to approach SAO's popularity. In 2015, two new shows appeared. Gate introduced the idea of the military getting involved in getting to the new world, which was a good idea, but still, the rest of the show was pretty average. On the other hand, Overlord had started a new trend with showing the villain's side. This was the first show that had an anti-hero as a protagonist. It was unique and fresh. In 2016, 5 new isekai has appeared. Haitogen no Grimlar, which I have not seen, but from the trailer and description I would assume it was not a big deal. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. The next is Konosuba, which is a brilliant satire of isekai and fantasy in general. ReZero, which had a lot of unique concepts and showed the darker and horrific side of this new world. A Chinese anime, which I have not seen, so no idea. And Drifters, which once again I have not seen. Then in 2017, we get a few second seasons and a few new ones. Counting all of them gives us 7 series that are revolved around another world. And in 2018, there has already been 8 isekai animes, counting the 3rd season of Overlord. If we look at the numbers, then it's quite clear that the era of isekai anime is still not at its climax. The numbers and the amount of hype are still going upwards. But unfortunately, along with the increase in quantity comes a great decline in quality. The isekai animes before 2017 had a unique perspective and a will to be fresh and new. But in 2017 and 2018, about half of the shows are complete rip-offs. If the tendencies continue, then 2019 and maybe even 2020 will be flooded with manufactured isekai animes. But I'm quite sure that the popularity of such shows will face a huge decline somewhere in the next 2 years. And after that, isekai anime can finally go back to what it was meant to be, a mere subgenre of fantasy. And what will cause the end of isekais? Well, many things. The first and most obvious is the bad ratio of quantity and quality. But aside from that, there's also a problem with finding audience. People will eventually get bored and will seek new, unique concepts, abandoning isekais. However, there is still a chance to reverse the process. If isekai animes start to lower their quantity and increase the quality, then there is still a chance of it staying relevant. But to do that, every isekai has to tell a different story from the ones we've already seen. Anyways, be it the downfall or the rebirth of isekai, I'm looking forward to what the next years will bring. And now I think I've said everything that I've wanted about isekais, so it's your time to share your opinions in the comment section. Thanks for watching.